Hello, hello. Today we continue with sheared flat land, and this video will contain images and no Google Earth tours, so I will be introducing the images and making most of the points I want to make, and then you can watch subsequent videos if you would like to get a more in-depth look and multiple views of some of these examples. So here's the thumbnail, and this will be our first example. This is the Nullarbor Plain in Australia, and it is the largest flat plain in the world. And if I remember correctly, it's about 500 miles from one side to the other. Okay, what can be said about this? It's pretty darn flat, that's for sure. One other thing I should mention is that the word sheared, sheared flat plains, I don't think that's necessarily very close to the truth. I doubt it was like a clumsy shearing maneuver, if this is even artificial at all. So there are legit explanations for why a flat plane this large might form and why it might be that flat, the degree of flatness. So there are natural explanations. I'm not, again, I'm not presenting these as my dogmatic opinion that they're artificial, but I'm just saying there's a decent chance that they might be. Okay, and some of the natural explanations are like the land pushes up, or like tectonic activity or volcanic activity or whatever pushes up from underneath, and it raises the land up, like it raises the whole shelf or whatever. Another way plains and plateaus and mesas and all that form are if the surrounding area erodes away, so it just stays in one spot, and then the surrounding area lowers, basically, by erosion. So that would be the natural explanation. Let's see. So, pretty darn flat. Obviously, Australia is pretty interesting. It's just kind of a wasteland, so it wouldn't surprise me if it's just like a big reset or resurfacing, or like a big landmass that is just kind of raised over to hit the reset button. So a couple different looks here at the flatness of it. And could it be due to some high-tech resurfacing effort? Certainly could. Resetting civilization or whatever. Any number of possibilities. Flat. Okay. California, this is a smaller scale thing. Smaller scale example of possibly the same thing or similar thing. So California, Spain, and Scotland, we have these flat plains. I'm sorry, not plains, but just flat areas of land. And in some cases, they look like they may be sculpted that way. So first of all, I should say that this is like prime real estate, like by the highway and the ocean. So obviously developers are going to prep the land for development, even if the land isn't sold yet, and whatever, just from a real estate perspective. So obviously there's going to be modern work creating these flat beds of land. So these, I think I will give you guys a look in Google Earth in the next video of these areas, just so you can make up your mind. And yeah, Spain. Potential like mature squiggle lines, tough to to say just from one photo. Let's see. I'm struggling with that minor detail that that some of these aren't particularly strong examples. They're just my hunch, which is kind of a major detail, yeah. But okay, Scotland. I think this historical photo goes back to like the 1940s or something, and it's like a shelf. It's like and then raise up, and then another shelf, and then another shelf. So kind of like a staggered platforms of land, and relatively undeveloped in these areas at least. Any number of explanations, just presenting it as possible examples of artificial stuff, even though we would drive right by it and just assume that it's modern conventional stuff. Okay. So this type of deal in San Simeon, California, and along a significant portion of the California coast, or at least what I've glanced at, there's some strange stuff going on with the coastlines. Okay, so this is like kind of a linear-ish gash or wide maneuver, for lack of a better term, or path maybe of something which sheared or flattened or just raised over the land and did some type of removal, presumably, of material. And we see possible parallel streaks there. And yeah, so multiple examples of that. Just down the way from that, here's another example. We've got these long gouges or streaks, which may or may not be natural. And then it's the recurring theme of like there's a headland near the water, and then a ways inland from that, there's like a stripe across the land. So I would just hypothesize that this stripe, this big wide stripe, is from something which was just migrating from one area to another as it reconfigured the landscape. That's the general gist of it. So again, I can't prove it. Here's a similar example in Chile. Now, how flat it is, I couldn't tell you. Same with these. They look to be fairly lumpy, so sheared flat, again, may not be the ideal term, but I could see this being run over from like some type of water activity, like during a flood, or like if this area is lower elevation than the surrounding area, then yeah, maybe water passes through here once in a while. And yeah, many of these in Chile, as we'll see in a moment. Stripes across the landscape. And here's another one, pretty large scale stripe. And here is this is looking more like a natural sand flow or a natural flow of something, so it may well be. Here's another example of just the straight streak marks going like straight in from this coast. And then it's hard to see in this image. I don't know if I have a better one up, but this is another one of those fairly straight ravines that we've seen plenty of so far. And so the presence of that, and even this little one right here, as we'll see in Google Earth later, makes me at least somewhat, or at least not feel silly asking the question, well, maybe these prominent streaks are not just run over or beach ridges or whatever, but they are, you know, some type of relic of terraforming activity. Another example in Chile, close to those two. So we have, this is a cool example because we have these streaks. It almost looks like in isolated little arcs, like just plenty of these little almost sweeps. I don't know if that's the right word again, brush stroke, or reminiscent of a brush stroke. Or like this one doesn't seem to follow the coastline necessarily. It might, but stuff here as well. Here. So, yeah, that wouldn't necessarily be sheared flat. That might be like raised over, might be a better term if there's anything artificial about this at all. But yeah, there's also this right here, which is a wide linear ravine. Again, it's the same idea of like this or this, like a linear stripe across, like some ways in from the headland in the on coastal areas. And again, could be natural, I know, differential erosion or whatever, but it's a fairly straight, kind of almost reminiscent of San Andreas Fault and a lot of the stuff we saw in the long straight lines video. I mean, who knows, maybe this is a fault. And then we get a better look at these nice little rainbows of streaks. Cool. So this may be sheared flat or something similar, maybe not. Another common thing, this is up north in Washington State, United States, and up towards Canada, I believe. And this is a good, decent example of like an island or a piece of land that's that has a flat, like almost perfectly flat end to it, ends. So like this portion right here is what I'm referring to, like this. It's like flat as a pancake, basically, almost. So I could see that being natural. I could also see it being modern work, and then I could also see it being this some strange hallmark of terraforming weirdness. There's actually plenty of examples of these. I don't have a lot of images up. Maybe I'll get more when I cover this in more detail and take you on the Google Earth tour, but it's a common thing to look out for is like an abruptly ending piece of land and then a perfectly flat finger like this and this. So be on the lookout for that. Andalusia, Spain. I'm not sure exactly where this is. It's a pretty large region. I couldn't find it while I was surfing around on Google Maps, but this is somewhere in the vicinity, and it's, again, you see the parallel lines on a large scale. See these nice, clean oval or circular lakes, and not looking like farms. It's, to me, this is about as close to a solid example for sheared flat land as it gets. I mean, this is basically like the poster boy of it, I guess. Maybe I should have used this in the thumbnail, but yeah, just looking like it was just flattened somehow, not necessarily sheared, but flattened somehow, and then they left these parallel and wonky circle patterns and stuff, either by design or by accident, or by by mistake, or by sloppy work. I think it's more likely to be on purpose, in my opinion. But I think there's an interesting story behind this. Okay, Morocco. We already looked at this area. I can't remember which video, maybe Patchy Land. We already toured this area on Google Earth, and I think some of these, or most of these, came up as modern or popping up in the last 20 to 50 years or something like that. I think not all of them, but maybe much of it. So this might be a modern thing, but it's just a decent example of something to look out for as a point of reference, maybe either as a control, like something that we know is not artificial, if that's what you think is going on, or I mean not strange, if you just want to go with the modern route, or we could consider the possibility that it's part of an ongoing terraforming weirdness protocol, or you know, etching and re-etching and vamping and revamping and revamping over and over the surface, just overwriting its the patterns it makes, you know, whatever it is, whatever force is behind this. So this may or may not be modern, conventional stuff, and it may be weird. It kind of looks like sheared flat land, so here it is in this video. Or again, this one, this wouldn't qualify as flat, but it's looking raised over, so it's kind of, or worked over, so it kind of fits with the theme. It's, let's see. These patterns, to me, indicate some type of warping and reconfiguring of the land, in my humble opinion, and especially since it looks so similar to other places like this Machair in Scotland, and then San Clemente, California, possible very similar patterns, just remnants of some kind of weird working over. Peru, just hundreds or maybe thousands of square miles of this business, these squiggly patterns. And so looking like something raised over the entire landscape in kind of a haphazard pattern, and again, not perfectly flat everywhere, but sheared or buzzed, like with a hair clipper almost, possibly even. Okay, Scotland certainly. We've got just blazed over or warped land. There's a good look at it. You can see the depth and width of these pretty massive troughs and ridges as compared to like this, what, like a minivan or something. So pretty heavy stuff. I think you've seen this image before. And here's a good photograph. See, this is kind of like sheared flatness. It's like they did the whole area, and then in some spots, or many spots, they left their tracks as a clue or something like that. I mean, maybe. I still have a little trouble with the why of it. And again, there may not be a why. It might be like a weird computer algorithm or something. So I would say this qualifies as potential sheared flat land. Just, oh, and not to mention the strange stone circle with derpy alignments, and I think it's a big nothing show, just a big mystery for mystery's sake, which again might explain the sheared flat patterns. So the sheared flatness, it might serve multiple purposes. It might be both to reconfigure the landscape for a fresh round of games or whatever purpose the reconfiguration serves, or it might be, it might also be as a deliberate mystery, as strange as that sounds, you know, just to confuse or to discombobulate, to bewilder. There's that possibility as well. And again, that's not my original idea. I've heard that from a couple sources. Iraq. So again, the same idea. This would be a bit flatter, I believe, and these wavy lines here, possibly indicative of some type of, almost like if you've ever seen a 3D printer or like the tip of a record player. It's just like a CNC machining thing, like just doing a stylus, basically, doing some type of cutting from above. It seems that way. Not saying it necessarily is. I mean, obviously, tractor tracks could explain it. This, if I recall correctly, this wavy pattern, it's there, it's visible as far back as the historical photos go. So I don't know what that's worth, but is what it is. Just the giveaway here for me is the sheer scale of it. Like they went to all the, like whoever did this went to all this trouble to raise over thousands and thousands of square miles of like bare desert, like nothing basically, and then they're not even using the land. So like it's just kind of like a wasteland for the most part, if I'm not mistaken. And kind of same thing with this ditch. So I mean, whether this was done by tractor or by wobulating plasma ball or whatever, it's still a bit strange. It's like a lot of work for what, you know? Just making patterns, just like busy work, kind of. Similar thing in South Africa. There's a chance that these are fairy circles, which is like a vegetation thing, or termite mounds, or any number of things. Eroding petrified termite mounds, that's possible. Any number of geological possibilities as well for these bumps. But I've also considered that the bumps are a clue, like in the same way that this stone circle and these lines are a clue. So like these bumps would be like a calling card of whoever sheared this landscape flat, if that's even what happened, but it might be. We have the lines and the patchiness and the somewhat flatness, but yeah. Okay, let's shift our focus a little bit to mesas, plateaus, and buttes, and I guess table plain would fall under that category as well. So mesa is an isolated flat-topped mountain with steep sides like this that is smaller in area than a plateau. And a butte is just like a smaller mesa. These are just the technical terms, I guess. And here's a mesa. Not sure where this location is, but it's just a good example of a flat top mesa. And it is, again, none of these are like perfectly flat, except maybe the Andalusia plain in Spain. This one, like, sorry, this one right here. So this one might be borderline perfectly flat, and also areas that have a reputation of being flat, like Florida and Nebraska. They're not perfectly flat, but they might be involved in this somehow, just flattened and resurfaced. Okay, so a mesa, what points do I want to make? So it's possible that it's something that was like severed across the top, like that it was something taller, like a, you know, the giant tree theory, which I'm not 100% stoked on, but I entertain it for sure. So like this was a giant tree or a taller mountain or something, and then someone just like shaved across it, or like laser cut it more or less, and sliced off the top of it somehow. So that's a possibility that wouldn't surprise me. Also wouldn't surprise me if it's natural to the degree that things even are. And let's talk about butts. So the Wikipedia page for butt had like 6 or 7 images, and I don't have anything to point out on all of these, but I just want to show them in the context of the one image I do want to show. So So there's these. Could be something, could be nothing, could be natural, whatever, whatever. A couple examples. This is Devil's Tower in Wyoming. The names of these places are somewhat interesting as well. So this one has a fairly flat top. You can't see it in this image, but it's got that hexagonal rock pattern and then the pretty flat top. So this could be severed across the top. That's the idea. So I guess if you just want to stop watching this video now, I would just say just go looking for things that look severed across the top, like whether it's mesas or like land, like extended regions of land, and then also vertical shearing as well is a thing. So that's, I don't know, that's, I guess the main point is that some things look like they may be sheared horizontally or vertically. Okay, so a couple more butts here, and these ones not looking particularly artificial. I'm just including them as points of reference for this last image here. So this is on the Wikipedia page for butt, and I think it's, I don't know who uploaded it, but it's a very interesting image. It's got like the protruding part, like here's the sea level or the ground we walk on, and then here's the butt poking up or just something poking up, and then what's down here is the interesting part. So the idea is this and all these butts, are these like something that's sticking up out of the ground, like something giant, and then for whatever reason part of it is sheared off just to make it presentable or whatever, or to disguise it? It's possible. I'm not 100% stoked on that one either. Remember the, okay, so this image rotated looks like when you look at it like this, it almost looks like an animal skull, like the nose and the eye, and like top teeth, like bottom jaw. Doesn't this look like a mouth, like top teeth, almost like a snake head here, but like fang, if you follow me, like a fang, like top of the mouth, bottom of the mouth. So I just find it interesting that this is on the Wikipedia page. It could be for deception purposes or to make people studying this look like an idiot, aka me and whoever else is talking about this. Yeah, so could these be things that are protruding up that extend far underneath the ground and also extended far above the ground, and then the top was cut off, and that's why the tops of some of these are flat? That may be. That also may be very far from the truth. So I'm just considering the possibility, and I thought this was an interesting image, so I thought I'd share it. Okay, Moab, Utah. It's Canyonlands National Park, and this environment is fairly flat, not perfectly flat, certainly. There's a lot of mesas protruding above some of the surface, a lot of layers. And also something to notice is this possible thing. If you remember when we did the Machair tour of Peru, or maybe it was Bolivia, there were like parts of the hillsides that looked like they were like just like lines of scrapey, and that may be the case. Hopefully we'll get a better look in when we do the Google Earth tour, but it may be an area which is heavily terraformed, and maybe not, of course, who knows. Decent look at some fairly flat topped, not perfectly flat, but fairly flat topped mesas here, possibly sheared across the top, possibly not. And then the rock, I think, is also worth commenting on. In a lot of these places, the like Joshua Tree in California and Idaho as well, and maybe this place also. There's kind of warped looking rock. I mean, possibly volcanic or any number of things, any number of geological explanations. Here's just a general look at the landscape. Obviously not flat, pretty lumpy and bumpy. I just want to give the flatter areas some context. So we have the kind of mesas in the background. We have all these layers, interesting to look at. And then I think this might be or a similar spot to that, like up here. Potentially. So it's just something to look out for. And possible markings and like short line segments and stuff here. But none of these images really are high resolution enough. So we're either going to have to look at some drone footage or try and see some stuff on Google Earth. Just showing a few examples here of the landscape for reference. And what else? Here we have kind of a straight line almost, maybe. Whoops. Okay, so again, see it's not perfectly flat. Why do I think this might be sheared over or like sheared flat? Just kind of because of the possibility of these flat mesas, like these. Wouldn't surprise me for sure if it's just all natural. I guess nothing would surprise me at this point. And I will probably eat those words at some point. Okay. All right, yeah, let's look at this one. So this one, just for reference again, the look of the rock could be natural, could be strange. There's the idea of like a big rock muffin, like pliable rock that was like plopped on the landscape and then like putty and then formed with very high tech into whatever patterns and stone types, like even the hardness of the rock and stuff like that, like something molded it into its current configuration or close to it. Just another look here. Again, the stone, always trying to get a good look at the rock, what's going on, possible. Not really, maybe, I don't know. Okay, and I think the last one here in Moab, or Canyonlands National Park, is this nice little corridor, natural corridor, allegedly, and I am still pretty suspicious of these seams, or like these abrupt, like these striations of rock that end in an abrupt seam. And I guess that's called cross stratification or cross striation or cross bedding, something like that. It's like when the land tilts and then a new era of sedimentation happens, and then the land tilts back the other way, and then more sedimentation happens. So that allegedly explains some of these abrupt seams, like that and like that. I would just say there's a chance that it's just phony or artificial somehow. Okay. Oh, I guess this is also in Canyonlands National Park. This is called the False Kiva. It's of unknown origin, and it's in Utah, and it's a stone circle. So it's just for reference. It's again the idea of a calling card, that these things are left as a catch and throw of weirdness to kind of glue it all together, like as a signature, or you know, one author with many identities, and each identity is akin to one of these patterns, like a stone circle or parallel lines or whatever. So it's like these types of phenomena are combined or strewn about in strategic ways to link phenomena to the author, perhaps. So I don't know. I've also considered that some of these stone walls are like from like the land was worked over and then they had all this leftover stone left, like remaining, and they didn't know what to do with it, so they just made circles and patterns and weirdness. I think there probably was a calculated angle to it, but you know, I don't think it was entirely random. But it's possible that this is just excess rock that was they had to use somehow. I don't know how likely that is, but so. Oh, and I guess one other thing I wanted to mention was possible vertical shearing, not necessarily shearing, but reconfiguring of some kind, not just horizontal, but vertical maybe in these areas. Okay, yeah, it's possible. And then this as a possible clue left behind to make us or help us figure it out, something like that. Similar stuff in Monument Valley, Arizona. So this mesa is pretty flat. So again, hit this one too, some of the others. The idea that it's raised across or sliced more or less to get rid of whatever was protruding up above this level as possible. Certainly, and could be natural, certainly. And then this is where the ground level used to be, and then this other area just slowly eroded away. That's kind of what looks like is happening, certainly. Or like tectonic activity or whatever, like push this up from underneath. It could be as well. And then anything else? Not really. Possible little. Nah, it's not good enough resolution. All right, so Monument Valley, fair amount of decent flat mesas here. We've got this butte. I think this is called Tower Butte in Arizona. And some looks here, just general look at the landscape. Another general look. Possible like scalloping of the land or just natural erosion. These, maybe there's something sticking underneath and something was up on top and then it got sliced off. It's possible, you know, maybe these were like trees or whatever. I mean, again, I'm not super stoked on that, but it's possible. And again, it's possible that whatever terraforming effort we're dealing with, that it configured the landscape and landforms into things that are that could be multiple things, or that could trigger speculation for multiple possible explanations. So like they're kind of lumpy and frumpy on purpose, and kind of flat on purpose, and kind of artificial looking on purpose, and kind of natural looking on purpose, as a way to kind of split people into these various areas of focus or lines of inquiry. That's kind of out there, but it could be. This is just another look at the landscape. Nothing really looking sheared flat, I would say. Only thing really struck my eyes sheared flat is maybe that, but then again, it's the rock layers themselves are kind of flat. You see that if those are natural layers. So these layers, they may be natural. Wouldn't surprise me if they're artificial. And let's move on to the next image. Just a general look at the landscape. possible natural or artificial, like dune type patterns. Trying to remember if there's anything I wanted to comment on these. There's not a whole lot of sheared flatness. So this is Tower Butte in Arizona. Yeah, there we go. There's a decent look at the top of it. Could be severed, sliced across. Nothing really more to say on that topic. So another look at it. Another look at one in the background. Whatever's going on. Okay. Pretty cool, pretty cool. This is Har Khartoum Mesa in Israel. And you see this one back here as well. It's just looking like the former level of the ground, like main ground level, which is eroding away due to whatever's possibly. So this is kind of like flat, and then over here, obviously, this area, this Har Khartoum Mesa is flat-ish, fairly flat, and the writing on top, I'm not sure what that all is. So, might be modern graffiti or like people leaving their, you know, Billy loves Sally or whatever. Or it might be like hieroglyphs or petroglyphs or something. I haven't really read up on this. Or it could, again, it could be like the clues deal, like calling card. Potentially. Mount Roraima in Venezuela. So this is like a very flat, this one has both the vertical aspect and the horizontal aspect to it. So there's this fairly clean, or not clean, but necessarily, but abrupt, let's say abrupt, like vertical face, and then a abrupt, more or less horizontal face as well. There's a decent look at it. Yeah, fairly flat. It's not perfectly flat on top, not perfectly uniform, and I don't think they, if it is artificial or there's some artificial aspect to it, I don't think they would have done too perfect of a job anyways, because then it wouldn't work, because this is supposed to pass off as natural or mostly natural or something like that. Also, these holes along the side, there's like waterfalls, like a bunch of like maybe you'll see it in a different image, but yeah, a lot of holes in the side, which are interesting. Not quite sure what to make of that. Then maybe vertically configured as well. Just a few different looks at it here. So possible flattening of some kind. And this one's a little different because it's so rocky, like solid rock. Some of the other ones are just like big dirt clods. This one's more like a solid rock mountain, which is a little harder to make flat, obviously. I guess it's not hard for water and weathering over billions of years, but okay, just a general look at the landscape. So obviously pretty dynamic and not flat, I would say. Just another look here. Here's a good look at like some holes that like just spout water. Like there's one. And sheared vertically, maybe. Sorry, got a little mouse happy. So this guy looking like natural, artificial, whatever, I don't know. Next one, just had a few of these for reference, the kind of flat look. And remember the vitrified look of like certain archaeological sites in Peru, Like certain stone sites have like a shiny vitrified look, as if seared by high heat. And I wouldn't say this looks vitrified, but it just has kind of that, I don't know, like it's like something happened on this surface. Ugh. I feel like I'm not explaining myself particularly well today, but we trudge forward. And then up on top, yeah, so it's not perfectly flat, or there's some flat spots and then some rocky, lumpier spots. And here's one of the lumpier spots. This is up top on Mount Roraima in Venezuela. And this one's called Turtle Rock. No, it would surprise me if this is a petrified turtle. I don't think that's what's going on. Like here's a human for scale. Just interesting rock patterns, presumably due to erosion, like different types of rock and different types of erosion. And worth noting, the striations in the rock, I can't say they look particularly artificial, but just throwing it out there that they might be. Okay, there's that dude. This one's called Elephant Rock. It's up there on top, and it's got the layers and the stacks of eroded stuff. And okay, I guess one more time I'll make this point about mimicry. Obviously, I could come up with, or not me, but there are legitimate explanations for how this might arise via erosion and any number of processes over millions or billions of years, or even just thousands or hundreds. But okay, supposing you were an advanced student of worlds, and you knew all about erosion, and you knew all about what patterns arise on long time scales. Well then, with that knowledge, could you not go and create those patterns artificially without all the intervening lapse of time? So you could just study a bunch of stuff like this, and then develop an algorithm which mimics this stuff, this type of natural erosion type of thing. So you could make, if you're programming and your skill level was high enough, you could create some type of device or protocol which would mimic natural patterns, or patterns which are natural under certain circumstances. So this protocol might have something like, given Earth conditions and this amount of time and this type of rock, you know, it'll spit out these, and these types of patterns, like after 1 billion years of erosion or whatever. So you could, by direct observation, you could look at what patterns arise, and then you could mimic those patterns if you wanted to. And then from that point, it's like, who's to say what's natural and what's not? Like chicken and egg and all that. Okay, so let's turn our attention to the Aran Islands in Ireland. These are in Western Ireland, and these islands bear hallmarks of possibly both vertical and horizontal flattening of some kind. And here we have like some type of rock wall or rock fort, forget what it's called, but these whole areas have these rock walls and ring forts and often haphazard layouts of walls or remnants of walls. And I'm saying these remnants of walls are actually, they might be mimicry too. Like rather than this being a full structure which was partially destroyed, it was created already looking partially destroyed or partially eroded, or you know what I mean. So it's like they only built half of a wall, like for deception purposes. or whatever. That's just one theory that I'm toying with. Okay, so general look at the landscape here and the geological striations, which may or may not be artificial. Again, the sheer volume or amount of rock walls, which is, it's like, and it would make sense if they were like in use and this were more highly populated. But I mean, maybe it was more highly populated in the past, but there was a lower human population in the past, so why would that make sense? But most of these plots are looking like they're not in use. Just like empty segmentations of land or plots bounded by these stone walls. So, so one thing I kind of touched on a little bit earlier is the idea that the land was sheared flat and then, or like re-terraformed somehow, and then a lot of the excess stone from that terraforming was used to create these walls just for the hell of it, or for amusement, or for deception, or whatever. I mean, it's possible. It doesn't really matter. I mean, who cares where they got the rock from? It's the why is the real thing that matters here. Like the what's going on and why it's going on is the most important thing. The how isn't quite as important, I think. So this is a ring fort, or so-called ring fort, again with stone walls coming out of it, and just like a wall and some walls, like a wall with walls, and we're meant to believe that this is like a legit fort. So I think this is just like a dildo, or like a false historical artifact. Yeah. Let's see some text right here. It looks like text. Ire. It might just be some, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, stone walls, and again, not perfectly flat, the land, but something weird may be going on. I'll touch on this phenomenon of forts and ring walls and stuff in later videos. This is another part of Ireland, just for reference, another ring fort. It's with like mounds and like rings of mounds and like a fort. I mean, this doesn't look like a fort. I mean, I guess, but like, I think how we're led to believe that primitive man behaved in the survival environment may not be entirely accurate in a whole bunch of ways, and like I don't think they did this for like for protection and stuff. It's possible that some really industrious person did this, and then like thousands of them were also built at other places around the world, which happen to look similar. But I think it's, again, kind of a nothing show, or a mishmash of features. So back to this one. This one's like a ring fort, but with a stone wall, and this is a ring fort, but with like just like mounds of earth, more or less. So I think it's just variations on a theme as per some type of algorithm which requires variation to achieve its purposes, or richness. Okay, this one is not on the Aran Islands, I think, but it's in Ireland still. So back to the Aran Islands, and we have these rock walls, yeah, and then also the ground itself has kind of a strange scalloped look to it almost. Like I almost wonder if like was this dug out from here, like these from here, and was it done by like a primitive man or Iron Age man with a pickaxe, you know, like early Irish farmers or whatever? Or, you know, I think it's more something more high tech, which is pretending to be low tech. All right, so just another general look at the landscape here and the stone. Here's some kind of stone fort, which is, this might be that first example, which is like just like hanging off or on the edge of the cliff there. Let me go back to that real quick. So it might be this one. That might be what that photo is. So let's go back to it. Yeah, so this might be that. So the idea is that like it's built as a ruin and isn't an actual ruin, if that makes sense. That may or may not be true. All right. So these long stone walls, not seeming to serve much purpose in my opinion, and then except maybe the walls are a clue that the landscape itself is bogus, I guess. Yeah, so we have the multiple looks here to the land. Some of them are being utilized, some are not. Okay. Again, stone walls lining the whole landscape, kind of haphazard placement of stones. This image is interesting to look at the quality of the stone. Like, this is just like a messy stone wall. And I'm just looking at some of these which have like, where was it? I can't find it. Let me zoom out. Like right here, kind of, like we see these notches almost, like this way and then this way. From a hammer and chisel, maybe, certainly. I guess just reiterate the possibility that it's high-tech pretending to make low-tech patterns. Like, zoom in there. Like here, these little grooves, potentially, although they might be the natural layering of the rock, but I just don't think this was all done. Like, first of all, the why behind it. Like, why would you just put a bunch of rocks? Like, this isn't tall enough to keep any intruders out or anything. It's just like a massive effort for like a non-functional thing. So that's, I think, part of an attempt to set a false frame or a false backdrop or false history for humans that doesn't make sense as a way to steer us in a particular direction psychologically and behaviorally and all that. So I think this is like a show, like a prop, because it doesn't look functional, but it's one hell of a lot of effort to put all that together. These lines here, I was just hypothesizing that these are maybe like artificial groovelets, sheared flat land, maybe. Just a decent look at some walls, different types, larger stones down here. Who cares? And good look at the landscape here. So again, not perfectly flat. There's some lumpiness, obviously some ridges and stuff. The stone walls, and then the vertical nature of the cliffside, and then the rocky flatness of it, possibly artificial. This image, just another one of those walls that's kind of gratuitous, just too many walls, more than are needed, I think. Another big wall in the landscape. This thing is called the wormhole, and it is a allegedly natural feature, and it's on the Aran Islands again. It's on the coast here, and this is an example of, you could make a case that this horizontally, that this is like a wave cut platform, or just an exposed geological layer that's fairly well differentiated from the layer above or whatever. But then we have these fine seams like this and like that and stuff. Could just be the way the rock crumbles, like mineral crystallization or whatever, mineral structure. But like we have this very nice thin seam here, this like vertical face, this smooth vertical face, fairly uniform, and then another seam here, and you see the scale of it. So I don't think this is natural. I think it is an artificial thingamajig. Artificial rectangle thing. There's a good view of it with the landscape above, and then this nice flat area here, and then a pseudo-natural rectangle. Awesome. So is it there as a clue? Maybe, but it looks sheared flat, both vertically and horizontally. Not necessarily sheared, but formed in a awkwardly flat fashion somehow. There we go. Okay. So similar to that, so take another look at this, and now look at this thing called Yangshan Quarry in China, which is allegedly just like old human activity creating this massive quarry. Like you see the scale of it. Like, do you really think like Roman era people were quarrying at this high level? I don't think so. So this would be like a vertically sheared flat surface, apparent or likely, potentially. And then of course the knobs are worth noting. So again, it's just a nonsensical hodgepodge of features, in my opinion. Features which are indicative or suggestive of some explanations, and also just ambiguous enough that they could suggest other explanations as well. So these knobs, I think, are just like kind of like a calling card or one of these dummy features, symbol soup or feature soup, more or less, for bewilderment purposes. And then the sheared flat surface of this quarry. So a few different looks here, and then these big cavities as well. Is that where rock was quarried? Maybe. I think it's high tech pretending to be some type of historical narrative that it's not. Okay, so that blah blah blah. Just another look. Flat vertical surfaces, kind of curving surfaces, a variety of different looks. So again, feature soup. Okay, so this one, I'm not exactly sure where it is. I can't remember, but this is basically a pretty ubiquitous thing. This may be Russia or Argentina. I know I've seen stuff like this in at least those two places. But this gritty pattern may or may not be indicative of some type of flattening of the land or resurfacing of it. Okay, and then we've seen a bunch of this recently. These grids or grooves along coastlines, and these may be like, generally these areas are pretty flat as far as I can gather. Like you see this one for sure. So these flat marshy lands are, coastal lands are all cut up like this. So possibly the land was flattened, and then like as a calling card, the weird patterns were left, these weird lines. It's possible, and then the patterns had to also look like they could be something with a down-to-earth explanation, like channels or erosion control or something like that. So again, they're shooting for multiple possible interpretations with the patterns they create. Maybe it's possible. But yeah, maybe this area of land was artificially flattened these areas as well, just like whole coastlines just like raised across somehow. This example in Ukraine. So I'm still not sold on this one, if this is even the same site, like this map and this Google Earth location. But the idea here would be that there was some type of civilizational aspect or structure, like a star fort or whatever, like a city, and then it was just like blitzed over and completely erased and like replaced with these phony streaks. So that would be like a sheared flat, like just blaze over the, like bulldoze whatever's there and plop some land on top of it, something like that. Okay, Bolivia. This is an example. It's from a study of ancient raised fields, and this is a modern attempt to recreate these fields, and this is an aerial image of what these fields look like. So I'm thinking this is like too large scale for modern man to have done, or yeah, modern man, or you know, whichever culture was inhabiting this area. So I think this may be some pattern goofiness, possibly, you know, as they resurfaced the land, they just left a bunch of weird patterns behind as well. I don't know. And then another look here at these causeways, as they're called in Bolivia. Just very, very long, wide, very straight features that are what used for farming in the past. I think it's more like something, not necessarily even the track of a high-tech device, but like the pattern created by a high-tech device. So it's not like the vehicle tracks, but it's some type of pattern which it was imposed by something which was reconfiguring the landscape for whatever reason. Do you guys get sick of hearing me say the same old speculations over and again? Anywho, so this was the premise of the paper of the study. Are the mounds, causeways, and canals in Bolivia's Beni region natural formations, or the result of 2,000 years labor by the lost societies, or by some type of high-tech weirdness? So I think that probably. El Enladrilado, Chile. So just take a look at this while I get a drink of water. So the idea would be maybe this flat rocky area is artificial. This lip is fairly interesting to me. So there's a close-up look of that lip, and it's like, it's kind of like warped looking, and it's almost reminiscent of the stone blocks we see on megalithic sites. So it's like there's the edge of the block almost, and then like the raised center portion of the block, and then like the margin around the center portion. And then this is like a weird weird lip, like again just like a strange feature. Which is just kind of thrown in there for weirdness purposes or whatever purpose. So a good look at the flatness of the area, and could be natural, certainly. Another good look at the flatness. These, like stuff like this, like right here, potentially reminiscent of like the vehicle tracks phenomenon in stone, and like that. And it could also be natural, just food for thought. This is an unknown site, or I don't know where it is. And we have these thin seams, very parallel, straight. Could be natural fissures or whatever, natural cracks. It might also be artificial stuff, and maybe like this This whole surface was flattened somehow. Another unknown site. This might be in Russia, and I've got a couple images of this one, and it's just like rows of rock, heavily eroded looking. Here's a look at it from above, and it's a tough call. It really is. This may be one of those clues, you know. So here's a look at the surrounding landscape. It's kind of out of place, like there aren't many other rocks like this in this landscape, as far as I can gather from the images. Just hills, and then like these seams may be artificial. Like again, a putty of rock, like gas almost. And then of course these circular holes, which look like they could be natural, and they could also potentially be artificial. Here's a good look at the surrounding landscape with this business going on. And my best guess on this one is artificial. So, like a calling card or whatever's. But I mean, if something is leaving this behind as a calling card, is it really so hard to believe that they terraformed other places as well? Perhaps even this surrounding landscape. But this area right here, this rock thing, it's kind of flat and looks kind of artificial, so I'm calling it sheared-flat. Even though it's, well, whatever, kind of lumpy. But I think these little stone circles are not to be ignored, and the details on the edges of these rocks are not to be ignored. It's unfortunate that these images are not great resolution. Maybe if you have the full resolution original footage, you can post it in the comments or something, or if you know the location of it. Okay, so I present this and the previous examples in relation to this vehicle tracks phenomenon. So we've got these fields of what look like some type of vehicle tracks, which I do not think are any kind of vehicle tracks, but we'll get to that in a minute. I just wanted to show this one more time, this area right here. So it's this flat rocky area, and this one has a more natural layout, I would say, to the patterns. It's not like such blatant tracks patterns, but then there's stuff like this, which are a little strange. So, and then of course the nice perfect seam here, or fairly linear thing there. So there's like some possible clues that whatever made this and even this possible vehicle track looking thing. So some possible clues that whatever made this plane is related to whatever made these vehicle tracks and this rock muffin thing. This, yeah, so this is a similar type of plane. And then let's zoom in here and check out a few of these. So this may be patterns left behind by something which was doing multiple pass-throughs in a resurfacing effort, like just large-scale grooves and stuff, large-scale grooves. But I think there's another component to it, which is that they are left there deliberately for some type of deception purpose or bewilderment purpose. So some obvious artificialness here, just like barreling through mountains and stuff. But I don't think it necessarily fits the bill of a high-tech vehicle just blazing through, and this is the tracks it left behind. I think rather it's it's subtle, but rather it's some type of high-tech thing which imposes these tracks and certain other details, including the tool marks, as a way to muddy the water or to make a confusing mess of details which doesn't add up to a coherent picture. So it is some type of high-tech device, but it's creating a confusing muddle of details by design, including something which looks like it might be tracks. So, so I do think it was shearing through the land and leaving these blazed over areas. I just don't think it was doing it by any type of vehicular means necessarily. Certainly not something on wheels. And even these, like, yeah, this looks like it could be tracks, but I don't think it's tracks. Again, I think it's just imposed on the stone to look like tracks, to confuse. Okay. So, I mean, you can't really make the case that something wasn't working over the whole landscape on a large scale when you see something like this, or like this top left one, this big field with these long grooves, very long grooves. Similar thing here, this one down here. So, yeah. Okay, Jordan kites. What to be said about these? So I think all I want to say with this is that it's possible that something which terraformed the landscape used the excess rock from the terraforming to make weird patterns such as these squiggles and stone circles and all that. Like these just nonsensical patterns, these gibberishy things. These may be just what was done with the excess rock, maybe. It's possible. And I'm kind of seeing like a path there almost. Maybe. Who knows? Kind of a line here. Maybe. Whatever's. It's not necessarily germane to this conversation, but I guess just the idea of a calling card. But anyways, let's keep moving. So these are ones in Africa, basically the same thing. So this is Jordan, and this is over 1,000 miles away, I think, in Ethiopia or whatever. So just nonsensical things. So it's, yeah, down here in southern Africa, I think Ethiopia. And stone walls. And I include these images because these fine strands of rock like this, or ribbons or little ridges or linear piles. I mean, not like straight, but just like little edges of rock. So these, I think, may be like another type of halfway point between the terraforming of the land itself and the stone circle. So it's like the stone circle is like all blatant, and then these are more subtle, but they are still artificial, and then they kind of just fade into the landscape, or they kind of line the whole landscape. But I think this more subtle pattern here is just as much of a clue as this more blatant one. So this, I don't think, is the only thing to focus on. I think these are indicative of some type of resurfacing as well. Just a few different looks here. More of the same, basically. More of the same. Okay, Russia. This mound, possibly sheared flat on top, hence the parallel lines, maybe not. Or we've got some dots as well, bumps. Here's another look. And just the surrounding landscape, it's pretty flat. I just wanted to throw out the possibility that this is left as a calling card to let you know that the whole landscape is bogus. that is all. And this is the last image. This is a volcanic plateau. It's called Pajarito Plateau in New Mexico. And it's, I mean, gravity is something we do experience. So, I mean, land's going to find its, any kind of flow is going to find its level anyways, whether it's water flowing or land flowing over eons or whatever. So land will prefer a flat pattern generally. I mean, that should kind of go without saying, but I just want to throw the idea out there that maybe some volcanic areas are not entirely legit. Like, we do observe like actual volcanism currently, obviously. I just wonder if some of these areas were like mimicked volcanism to start with, and then, man, a lot of weird possibilities, but crap, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this. I guess, yeah, I'll just say some volcanic rock phenomena may be non-volcanic in nature, so it may be mimicry and mimicry of natural patterns, or what would happen over a long-term natural time scale. So I guess the idea is I'm questioning this plateau as a kind of a flat, just one more variation on a flat plane or plateau. This is just like a stylized version, perhaps. And again, it sounds weird coming off my tongue, but sheared-flat. So certainly not sheared, but potentially artificially flat using mimicked volcanism. Okay, I think that about sums up this image. And that'll do it for this video. Tune in to the next one for some Google Earth tours of some of these examples. All right, thank you for watching.